Welcome to All Over the Map. Take chances and ask questions.
Open discussion on all topics. The driving force. Get her done. Laughter is medicine for the soul. It's a small world after all.
Wow. Chyzowski is strong. He didn't back off, and he kept firing them. And at that point, hard to tell whether he was landing them or whether he was hitting them on the side of the helmet.
We're welcoming Dave Chyzowski, Chizer, to All Over the Map. He's a July baby, born July 11th, 1971. He's a Canadian former professional ice hockey left winger that was selected second overall in the 1989 NHL entry draft by the New York Islanders after playing major junior with the Kamloops Blazers. He spent parts of 6 seasons in the National Hockey League with the Islanders and the Chicago Blackhawks between 89 and 1997, with the rest of his career spent in various minor leagues and in Europe. Get ready for this one. Chizer's a great guy. Welcome, Dave Chyzowski, to All Over the Map. Thanks for coming on, Dave. I really appreciate it. How's your day going there in Kamloops?
Kamloops is treating me very well. I booted my wife out. She took the dog for a walk and just sipping on some coffee and enjoying my day off today.
Nice. Oh, yeah. Before we get going here on that, I got to shout out to our unofficial sponsor, Tim Hortons. Thank you very much for all your service.
Love it.
Step. All right. So,
what's in there?
Just coffee.
Okay.
Yeah. Happy coffee.
Happy coffee.
Yeah. All right, man. So you played your junior for the Kamloops Blazers before being selected second overall by the New York Islanders in 1989. Let's give our audience a bit about your little backstory about your journey to the NHL from a young boy that ultimately led you to achieving your goal.
Yeah, no, I grew up in Edmonton and playing hockey. I mean, Edmonton was a big hockey city. I had 2 older brothers that played hockey. My oldest brother, Ron, went to school at Northern Michigan, got a scholarship, came out of, where do you come out of? St. Albert Saints, a junior hockey, the junior A program in Edmonton was pretty good. There's a lot. I think the year my brother got drafted to Hartford in 83, there was 11 guys, I think, on his junior team that got drafted in the NHL. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
So it was a big hockey city. There was, our family was a big hockey family. The Bennings were a big hockey family in Edmonton. We kind of all knew each other, but hockey was just a way of life for everybody. I used to throw my skates in my school bag and my stick and actually skate some days to school because the rink was right in the playground area of our school. And I would skate for hours before school. And as soon as school was over, I'd go skate after. And my mom would come and pick me up usually at 11, 12 o'clock at night. And that's all I did was live at the rink and loved it. And then as I got a little bit older, bantam into midget. I played midget in Edmonton. And then a big fat guy named Ken Hitchcock came to watch me play, and all of a sudden, before you knew it, back then in junior, they just listed kids. They're like, hey, that kid's good. What's his name? We'll list him. So depending on the age, and I can't remember the exact number, but each junior club in the Western Hockey League had 50 roster spots. So if you wanted to list a kid like back in the day, well, Seattle listed, what was his name? Played 7 years in the league. At 14, they listed, well, Robbie Brown. They listed Robbie Brown. He takes up like 5 or 6 spots on your protected roster. And I was one of those kids. They listed me at like 15 years old or 14 years old. And the only reason I actually came here, I'd had no idea that I was going to play junior hockey because my 2 brothers played college hockey. So I just thought I would follow in their footsteps. And then the problem was at 14, I played major midget in Edmonton, and I led the entire league in goals, points, and apparently I was a good player. So I had to decide at that point, am I going to play 2 more years of midget or another year of midget and then another year of junior A before I can go to go play college hockey? And I decided, with the help of like my brother Ron that got drafted to Hartford in 83, we got to know the Hartford Whalers, some of their staff really well. because back then when the guys got drafted, even he got drafted like in the 6th round, like we had people come out to visit the family, get to know the family. So we had people to lean on to find out what would be the best avenue for me. And I remember talking to one of my brother's ex-coaches in Northern, Walt Kyle, who was a pretty renowned hockey guy in the day, about what the best avenue was for me to go. And he's like, you got to go play major junior. Ken Hitchcock runs a program in Kamloops with Bob Brown. And it's a pretty neat program where they just produce good hockey players to play in the NHL. And I'm like, so we finally decided. And the funny part is I came through, I'll never forget when the Coca Hollow was built. I came through Kamloops because we were going to the Vancouver Expo, whenever that was, in like 85 or 86. That's when it was. And I came through town, and I would have been 15 or 14 or 15. And my dad's like, you want to live here? And I'm like, no, this place is a hellhole. I'm not living here. And then lo and behold, I ended up deciding to come to Kamloops. And at 16 was when I started my junior career, played here 16, 17 for Hitch. Got drafted by the Islanders at 17, and then after that, I, unbeknownst to me, they didn't plan on keeping me in New York when I went there for camp, and we can get into more detail, but they put me on a line with Pat LaFontaine for exhibition. I led our team, I think, in points for exhibition, and they ended up keeping me. But the shitty part is I never played, and I kept asking to go back to junior because in the first year I never got hurt. I played like 30 games. I would sit out every other game. Al Arbor was just a dink to me and played mind games with me and fucked with me like you wouldn't believe. It was unbelievable. Yeah. So it kind of it was a real struggle my first year in New York because of the fact that I never played. There was games. I'll never forget a game in Winnipeg. We went out for dinner after my cousin lived there. And he owned a restaurant in Winnipeg across the street from the rink. And I went and ate with him, and I wasn't playing well, and I was kind of in and out of the lineup. And I was like 3 minutes late for curfew, and it was early in the year. And I think I sat 9. I didn't even dress for like 12 straight games because he was so mad at me. And I'm like, I'm not even getting better. I want to go back to junior and play. This is so. It was like, and then I was on the phone with the commissioner of the Western Hockey League, who was a good friend of mine, Ed Chenoweth, because Dean and I were good buddies. He was my best man at my wedding. And I'm like, you know what? This is the dumbest thing in the world. I sat in the press box so many nights wondering. And then as soon as you get into a game and I would make one mistake, I'd turn the puck over, and they didn't even have to score. I'd make a mistake and I'd sit for 3 or 4 or 5 more games.
Yeah. Not easy on the psyche.
It wasn't.
Or the emotions.
Or the emotions. And I'm like, you know what? The NHL isn't what I like. It's not what I thought it was going to be. I just want to play hockey. You play hockey your whole life and you love it. And then it just sucks the wind out of you. And I remember an NHL scout telling me all the time, the NHL ruins more players than it helps. And I was one of those guys. And I you know what? I blamed New York and I blamed everybody. I should have did something different and found a different way to do things. But I got off on the wrong foot my first year. And the shitty part was, as soon as training camp was over, he took me off of LaFontaine's line, and I played on the 4th line with Mick Vukota and Robbie DeMille forever. And I'm like, okay, then I started fighting, and then it was a battle to say the least.
Well, it's interesting enough, because the next question I was going to ask is, did you feel a lot of pressure being drafted so high, and how did such at such a young age, how did you stay focused mentally and physically? A lot of pressure, obviously, being drafted 2nd overall. You go to the New York Islanders probably with high expectations. You lead the team in scoring, and just what you said there. I mean, it had to be a bit of a mind fuck.
You know where Ryan, the pressure came from was the media in New York and the newspaper. It was always, I was the next, because I could shoot the puck, and that's what I did really well. The media and the press were all over me as the next Mike Bossy, and I'm like, holy fuck, are you kidding me here? And then so I came to camp. They gave me, everybody that got drafted back then, as you could probably remember, your number was usually, the first rounders always wore their number of the year they got drafted. So I got drafted in 89. So I started with 89. And this probably was another part of the problem. And I come to camp, I'm wearing 89 in preseason. A lot of guys had high numbers, 57, just training camp numbers. And I'm wearing 89. And I remember Alexander McGillney in Buffalo had 89, and I'm like, I don't want the same numbers that fucking Russian. And, we hated the Russians in the league always, and there weren't that many of them. And so our trainer, Jimmy Pickard, came up to me, and he's, God rest his soul, he passed away a few years ago. And Pick says to me one day, he goes, Chizer, I got to tell you something. I talked to Clarky the other day, and I told him we can't let this fucking kid wear the same number as that fucking Russian in Buffalo. Can we take your number down from the rafters and let him wear number 9? I think he's going to be good. And Clark Gilly said, absolutely. So he kind of had it semi-retired, and I wore number 9, and that's when the problem started. I was getting fucking hate mail and death threats and phone calls, and it was beyond. I'm like, are you kidding me? People are like, take that fucking jersey off. You're a disgrace to Clark Gillies. And I'll fucking come and find where you live and beat the fuck out of you. And it was unbelievable. And I'm like, okay, this is crazy. I remember one night someone was calling my phone, and Mick Vakota and Richie Pilon lived upstairs in the house we were renting. And I'm like, I think someone's at the fucking back door banging on my window. And they had to come downstairs with hockey sticks trying to see if someone was trying to break into our house. It just got absolutely ridiculous. And I was like, okay, this is stupid. I can't be wearing number 9 anymore. I literally was getting hundreds and hundreds of hate mail to the point, and I wasn't telling anybody about it except for Mick and Richie. And I'm like, okay, this is crazy. And then it went on for years. And then I was there for 5 or 6 years, and then I moved on. But it was unbelievable how I got treated there by, I wasn't producing. I wasn't the player they thought I was going to turn out to be. And it was just, it's the same way my dad is in Edmonton with the Oilers. He gets so mad at them. He just wants to strangle every player because, passionate fans are passionate. And I get it. It's just, I was an 18-year-old kid that just got between Al Arbor and the fans. I got absolutely abused. I used to go to church on Sundays. I'm Catholic, and I'd go to church on Sundays, and I'd see Al with his wife and kids at church and be like, "Hey, Chiz, let's get ready for a big game tonight. We need you guys to do a lot. And you guys your lines got to click, and we need you tonight. It's a big game." And literally I'd get to the rink and I'd be a scratch, and he wouldn't play me. I didn't even dress.
Know the feeling.
And he wouldn't talk to me, and nobody would talk. It was unbelievable. I'm like, and then his only thing he'd say to me is, expect the unexpected.
Yeah, it's like a Jedi mind warp for the mind.
Exactly.
You get your hopes up and whatever, and then you go to the rink, and you're next thing you know, you're counting how many draws were won on the face-offs.
100%. It was all about the one thing I couldn't do, and when I remember practicing with Lauren Henning, is our deep. Back in the day, you'd remember everybody rimmed the puck all the time, so I could not, for the life of me, pick up a puck off the rim. Junior, we never worked on those things. Hitch's philosophy was, go shoot the puck and line up at center ice. He goes, you got a good shot, shoot the fucking puck and line up at center ice. Don't worry about your own end. We need you to score goals. And that was his philosophy. And then later on in pro, he had this dream of being a defensive coach, and that's how he ended up coaching his years in the NHL, as being defensive minded. But we just weren't taught that. If you were a goal scorer in junior, they wanted you to score goals. We didn't play in our own end.
Yeah.
So it was just, there was a lot of factors involved in New York that didn't work out. And the funny part was, I ended up signing, I think I went to Detroit. I signed with Detroit or Chicago first. And I went to Chicago, and I'll never forget training camp and how much, what was the coach's name there? I'll think of it in a sec. Too many concussions. No, he was a big guy. He had a big head. Craig Hartsburg. Yeah, he was a big man. He talked to me more in training camp in the 1 year. And then I got called up before Christmas to Chicago for about 2 or 3 months. I didn't play all the time. He talked to me and worked with me more in that year that I was in Chicago than anybody did in the organization in New York in my 5 or 6 years there. It was, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this guy, I feel like this guy likes me and I want to play for him. And it didn't work out. I signed a 2-year deal in Chicago, and I think I got bought out the second year. But it was one of those things where Hartsey talked to me more in the time I spent in Chicago, which wasn't very long, than any of the Islanders people did in the organization forever, except for, I have to say, Bill Torrey. Bill Torrey was pretty good to me. He always apologized to me for the way Arbor treated me. He's like, don't listen to him, don't listen to him, don't listen to him. That's all he kept telling me. And he'd apologize to me. He was actually really nice about it.
Wow.
But it was the pressure came from the media. Then they just started ripping me, and that's when I was probably 18 or 19. I stopped reading newspapers and media, and I still to this day I don't watch the news or media.
Well, yeah, and that's a fragile age to be. I mean, you're playing the goddamn National Hockey League there, and you're having to get ridiculed by the. Yeah, I mean,
100%, and it's so different now, right? Like you're a first rounder, you're even drafted now. They make sure you have every ounce of support staff, everything. You need this, you need that, what can we do to help you? It's almost maybe a little bit over the top. There's no such old school anymore, but they really try and cater. Mind you, it is a big investment. You're paying these kids a lot more money than we were paid back then. My first year in New York, I made $100,000. And I came home in the summer, and my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, she was working at McDonald's, and I had to borrow $1,000 off her because I didn't have a dime.
Oh boy.
Yeah. It was a fun year. It wasn't that I wasn't out partying all the time, but I was like, hey, I was buying expensive suits, and we'd rent. Clark Gillies had a limo company after Sunday nights, always Sunday nights. If we didn't play during the week, we took a limo and went into New York City and went to some clubs and got into private parties, and it was pretty cool. There was a part of it was actually probably good for me because I needed an avenue to vent and get away and just try and forget about the game, because it just eats you up. You wake up in the middle of the night.
Sure. Sounds like the off ice that first year was more fun than being actually on the ice itself.
You know what it was, and I really didn't start. I wasn't a big heavy drinker, but I didn't start drinking more until I was probably 24, 25, when I'm like, fuck that. And then I started like, I got to go have a beer after the game, and I wasn't even playing. We got bagged in the morning all the time if we weren't playing, and then we had to come to the rink at night and work out in the event somebody got hurt in warm up.
Right.
And it drains on you. Then you watch the game upstairs and you're just drained. And then you come in, if you lose, the only shitty part was if your team lost and you weren't playing, there's a real good chance you were getting back into the lineup. So there was a lot of times where I'm like, I hope we lose so I can play again. And it was an awful attitude. And I remember Brad Lauer was a winger as well. And Lau and I kind of were in and out of the lineup at the same time. And we were good friends, and we're like, fuck, if they lose and then Lau's out and I'm in, and vice versa. It was like, it was one of those things where they did shit that it was hard. It's almost like it turned players against each other on the team because of just the way that it worked out.
That's a profound statement. I think a lot of players can really relate to that, because you want to support and you're part of a team. At the same time, you're sitting in the stands and, you're rooting on for your team. You want them to win, but at the same time, you want someone to screw up just so you can get back into the lineup again.
Exactly. So you can play. And that's all you play. And I said this before, you're playing hockey your entire life. I went to the outdoor rink every single day when I was a kid. I never got paid for it. I would never sleep. That's all I wanted to do was play hockey. And then all of a sudden, when you start playing it professionally, you're like, hey, this isn't as fun as I thought it would be. And it slowly sucks the life out of you.
You realize you're a commodity.
You are, and it becomes a job really, really quickly, which is really sad. You lose the passion for it, and it becomes a job. And now you look at these guys, that's all they do. They work out. My kids, I got 2 kids that play hockey. My older boy's going to school out east, but that's all he does is eat, breathe, and live hockey. He works out every single day, all year long. Even when they play games, they work out after the game. Like, it's become such a job and a process and how they do things. It wears on you when things aren't going well.
Yeah. Interesting. That's great information. All right, so we got to ask here, as we've had 2 of your old teammates on, Dodie Wood and David Linger. let's hear a little bit about the bond that you guys had and some of the stories to go along with those relationships.
Well, first of all, I'll start with
Doty,
who do I want to start? Let's start with Doty. He's
get the
I
big
got
guy out of the way first, eh?
Exactly. Doty has some of the most remarkable happenings in his life that you would ever think of, and I'll never forget one of them that was absolutely. But so Kemper Arena in Kansas City, where we played, it was an unbelievable arena, downtown Kansas City. We lived about 20 minutes north, up near the airport, and our practice rink was about 5 minutes from where we lived. So we were about 15-20 minutes from downtown. And I'll never forget, after games, we'd go into, it was kind of a lounge pub area where we had food. We could eat right away, which was great. We had to pay for it, didn't matter. And there was a bar. And there was a lady there that owned the bar that was unbelievable to us. If we wanted to stay there a little bit later, she was good with us. Okay, guys, make us more food or whatever. And if we lost and we wanted to drown our sorrows and stay a little longer, she was good. And I'll never forget, it was about 2 or 3 months into the season. And when we'd go in there after every game, we were going to the practice rink up near where we lived, and Doty says, and he gets up and he goes, "I need some help." I go, "No problem, Doty, what do you need?" He goes, "Last night after we left the bar, and she closed the place up, he went and hid in the beer cooler, and he stole like 30 cases of beer out of the cooler, and he was hammered. And he stole like 30 cases of beer out of the can. So he tells me and John Roloff, who was on our team, a defenseman that we hung around with, and Linger, I think Linger too. He's like, he felt awful because the girl was so good to us. He's like, "I can't do that to her." He goes, "I don't know what I was thinking. I was just being an idiot." He stole 30 cases out of beer. They're all in his truck. And we got to sneak them back and replace them all back in and break into the place and put all these cases of beer back into the fucking bar. I'm like, and it literally took us probably a good hour and a half between the three of us, Doty, myself, and Johnny, rolling. And I'm like, "How the fuck did you do this?" And he didn't. He said it took him like 3 hours to do it, because between being hammered and crawling through this window back and forth, where you could only take like 1 or 2 cases at a time, and then you have to walk down an entire hallway, because we parked at the opposite end of the where the bar was. You couldn't get in anywhere near them. I'm like he was just bizarre like that. He would just do some of the stupidest things in the world. And
that would make you laugh your ass off.
We were like, and he'd be smiling. He had, he's got this shit-eating grin on his face, and he would fucking be like, I go, "Why'd you do it?" "Because I can." Like, he goes, "Yep, I'm a donkey, I know, but I need some help." So we'd go play, and that's just one example of Doty. And Linger he was a guy we went. Linger's one of my favorite stories about. There's a couple I can't tell, but one of my favorite stories about Linger was, we were
we don't want to get him fired from IG management.
Exactly. If he watches this, he'll know the shorthanded story I'd be referring to. Anyhow, Linger, we'd go to this restaurant, and I can't remember the name of it. It's still in Kansas City. It's in the worst area in Kansas City, where the guy would come outside and park your car for you, because if you parked it in the wrong area where the restaurant was, Garazzo's was the name of it. It was lights out. We loved it. We went there. We tried to go there often. But every once in a while, Linger, because we were cheap playing in the minors, he said, "You guys want me to take care of dinner tonight?" "Yeah, no problem. Go ahead." We'd all go outside. All of a sudden, he would get up from the table, and he would literally almost do like a somersault flip, land on the floor, and almost try to knock himself out, but pretend he knocked himself out, lay there where we'd have to call an ambulance, and we would get our dinner paid for. We would just leave in the ambulance to take him to the hospital. And he did this a few times And I'm like, are you kidding me? He would just, and I think there would be times where he'd want someone to punch him in the face and knock him out in the restaurant so that we could get out of there. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And he would do this. He was one of the craziest bastards I'd ever seen in my entire life. And that was just one example of some of the things that he would do. And he was one of the funniest chirpers on the ice I've ever seen in my entire life. And he was a little guy, so he'd always get picked on because he talked, he chirped. But the thing was, he was tough enough that if he would fight guys, and he was a tough little bastard, and he could score goals.
Yeah, he could back it up.
He could back it up, but that was just one example of some stupid things he'd do. And I remember going in, I can't remember, we'd go into some tough cities, and we'd always come up with a plan before the game. If we knew
stupid things for smart meals.
100%. We'd be fighting in the dressing room who was going to fight who during the game that we were playing against the team, and it would be literally we'd be arguing with each other who gets to fight who.
Holy jeez.
Yeah. And Doty's one of the smartest enforcers I've ever seen, because anytime we played against teams that were tough, we had some kids in our team that were like scared shitless, and they were, softer players. And anytime we played tougher teams, Doty, which was brilliant, I'll never forget this, Doty would go after their soft players and say, let's say, for example, if Ty Domi touches, who had been a good example back then, Michael Pavanka, I'm coming after you, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. So their skilled players would tell their tough guys, leave him alone because he's coming after me, he's not going to fight you. And those kids were equally scared on their team that our soft kids were on our team. So he'd intimidate the skilled players in the other team to make sure that they controlled their tough guys so that there was no problems. And then we could have decent games. Otherwise, their tough guys would go after, they'd slash our guys, cross-check and abuse them. So Doty would go after their skilled guys. He wouldn't go after their tough guys. And that's how he controlled. That's how he, and we had some tough guys. If the tough guys were hard against our tough guys, it didn't matter. But if they went after our skilled players, Doty's number one thing would be to go after their skilled players. And skilled players don't like that.
No, brilliant, though, on his part.
It was brilliant. And he did it so well. It was unbelievable.
Very tactful.
Yeah, he was, and he was tough too. He was one of those technical fighters that he could fight anybody, and he was a tough fucker. And he had leathery skin. I still don't think he has a hair on his chin or beard or mustache, but he had leathery skin, and even if you hit him, it didn't matter. It didn't even affect him. He was a tough bastard. Fuck, he was tough.
Wow.
And he loved fighting.
I've seen a few of his videos on YouTube there. Yeah. He didn't lose too many.
No, he didn't. And even if he did, he'd want to fight him again. He wanted revenge. And those are the guys that are hard to fight. If you beat them up, they get mad, they get embarrassed, and they want to fight again. It's almost like you can't win.
Yeah. So let's hear a little bit about your first NHL game and your first goal.
First, both have a pretty solid place in my head. The first game was in Minnesota. Playing against the North Stars, which ironically was the city where we had the draft that year in Minneapolis. It was across from the Great Mall of America, which is owned by the Gramesians, who owned West Edmonton Mall. So I thought it was kind of cool. My family and I got to go to the draft. We get drafted in Minneapolis. I think it was I can't even remember the name of the rink back then. And then I get to go play there my first game. And then the funny part is I signed my NHL contract the morning after our pregame skate in Minnesota. So by the time I played the game that night, I officially signed my contract that morning. I remember being so excited, talking to my agent, Donnie Meehan, and talking to my dad, telling my dad what I signed for. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. I think back then I got $200,000 to sign, and my salary was like $100,000, and I was just in heaven. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And I ended up getting an assist that night. In the third period, I think we tied them. We tied them or won 3-2. I remember I had one shot on goal, and the shot I missed the net came off the back wall, and Doug Crossman, one of our defensemen, put it in the net, and that's how I got my first assist. Kind of a shitty, cheesy assist, but that was pretty exciting. Yeah, it was one of those. And then my first goal is one I'll never forget, because it was against the Edmonton Oilers, who I grew up in Edmonton watching the Oilers and idolized. And it was against a goalie who I've become friends with over the years in Bill Ranford,
I was going to say,
because
yeah.
his nephew Brendan lived here with us when he played for the Blazers. So I got to know Billy really well. And he even remembers my first goal, which is kind of funny because it was on the power play, and I'll never forget it. It was a cross ice pass from Pat Flatley. It went from LaFontaine to Flatley, and I was over on the half wall on my off wing, and I took a one timer and I roofed it right over Billy's, right over his shoulder.
Just shelved it right now.
I shelved it, and it was the most excited I think I've ever been in my entire life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was one of those things to score. And that game was my first game back after separating my shoulder in Calgary before Christmas. No, it was early on in the year. I separated my shoulder in Calgary, and I was out for like 4 or 6 weeks. And that was my first game back, and I scored again. I wanted to play against the Oilers so badly, playing against Gretzky and Messier and Coffey and Kevin Lowe and Grant Fuhr and Billy Ranford. I was like, this is surreal. I remember skating around in warm up. I'm like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable. It was probably to the point where I don't think I managed my emotions very well, because I think that I was so excited and so caught up in playing against these guys. It sucked all the life and energy out of me. And I don't probably think I played my best game, but it was one of those things where it tied the game. We were down 5-4, and I got put on the power play late in the game, and I scored, and we tied the game that night.
That's a great story.
It was pretty cool. Yeah. I remember watching.
They scored your first goal in your hometown.
No, it wasn't in Edmonton. It was in New York.
In New York.
Yeah, that would have been really cool.
That would have been.
That would have been cool. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. So, how difficult was the transition? Obviously, playing hockey for all those years into, let's say, normal life. I know you've been heavily involved in the game, after retirement, but that transition of not being a player for a lot of players is a tough go. How's it been for you?
Awful.
Yeah, no shit, eh?
You know what? It's something that it's just people can't even come close to comprehending, and I don't even try to explain it really anymore to people, because it's one of those things. Unless you go through it, you have absolutely zero idea how hard the transition is. And there's a lot of guys that do really well at it. I was one of those guys that struggled with it, because when you do something for so long, it's just been your life. And when it became a job, I eventually treated it like a job, but it's a way of life, and it's a circle of friends that understand the way of life. Like, that's all we did was I hung out with hockey players every day all summer, and we didn't really interact with people that weren't hockey players, because they just didn't understand. We'd get up early in the morning, we'd go work out, we'd go golf, and then we'd always meet and have beers at night or go for dinner somewhere or get together. And it was just hockey people, because we were kind of considered special, I guess, because we were making a lot more money than a lot of our friends that didn't play hockey. Yeah. And it was hard because there was a lot of jealousy involved, and they're like, oh, these spoiled hockey players, this and that, we're driving nice cars around. And it was just one of those things where we did not interact with regular normal people, because it was almost like it was hard to hang around them because they didn't get it.
Yeah, they just didn't understand.
And then moving forward, and I fell into an unbelievable job working for the Blazers, the team that I played for as a kid, which I loved, but it was really, really hard to not be able to. I wasn't great at my job. It was in the business side and building corporate sponsorship, and I got along with a lot of business people because they immediately had respect for me, not because of what I was doing, but because of what I've done. Everybody was like, my wife still bugs me. She's like, everybody loves Dave. It's one of those things where I had no problem talking to business owners that own multi-million-dollar businesses, because I could relate to them a little bit in some terms, where I didn't look at them as being better than me or making more money than me. I'm like, these guys just understand about success and having success and how to deal with people in their circle of friends. And, I loved it and I enjoyed it, but I missed putting my skates on. I missed going to the rink every day. And it doesn't end. I bet you it was 20 years, right, before I was like, because you're so good at something, you do it naturally, it's your entire life. And then all of a sudden it changes.
Yeah.
It changes to the point where, I'm spending 10, 12, 13 hours a day at the rink because I work all day. Then we have games at night, and I'm missing going to watch my kids' activities. And it was really hard for me because I missed a lot of stuff growing up with my kids had because of playing hockey. You miss a lot of things because hockey's number one. And I was one of those idiots that I put hockey before my family any day of the week. And it was something that I just couldn't, I couldn't stop doing it. And when I got into the game, like got into working after hockey, I still ended up putting everything. I'm like, hey, now I got to work. Now I've got a life after hockey. Now I got to work even harder because this isn't something that comes natural to me.
Yeah.
Your hockey players are spoiled fucking brats.
Absolutely.
We get everything done for us. My wife got mad at me because of the fact that I had, when I first started my job, I didn't know how to fill out an insurance paper for medical. I didn't know how to book flights for myself. I didn't know how to go and sign mortgage papers for buying a car, or buying not mortgage for a car, mortgage papers to buy a house. Everybody did it for us.
Yeah.
You go to a city, you get traded. They got people that find you a hotel. They got people that find you this. They get you a car. They fill all the forms out. We never filled out forms. Like, it was like you're spoiled. And I saw it. It was interesting because I saw it when I worked for the Blazers, and we had our ownership group of Mark Recchi, Daryl Sordor, Jerome McGinley, and Shane Doan. And that's all the guys would do is call, can you book me a car? Can you get me this? Can you book me a hotel? Can you book me this? And I'm like, you know what? These guys were me. And I learned how to do it all after, but you get it's, and I don't even want to, label just hockey players. It's athletes in general, and people that had everything done for you. You just become so dependent on others. You have zero independence, and that's a struggle when you're done hockey, because they should be teaching you. Teams should have people that are teaching you this and preparing you better for life after hockey, but they don't.
Well, that's the thing, is that people, they look at, say like a hockey life, or even like athletics in general, as being like a kind of a chaotic life. At the same time, it's very habitual, and there's a lot of structure that goes into it. Everything's planned, practice at this time, got to be at school at this time.
Exactly.
Curfews, everything is like programmed into that mind. You got, everything is like literally, like spoiled brats. It's all, you get onto the bus, there's a lunch pack for you or whatever. It's all, everything's in your locker stall. It's you go to a bar, you drink for free. Everything's
Exactly.
just like
100%. We never paid for drinks. We
Christ,
walked into a bar.
I never made my bed.
I know. It's funny you say that. I make my bed every day, and I watched a video on some corporal sergeant.
Yes, the same video.
Said,
I know the
did you
guy.
see that? It's so
I've
fucking cool. It's make your bed, and he said it's the way you got to start your day every day. And I started doing this about 6-7 years ago. After I got cancer, and that'll be a different story. And I started making my bed every day, and I'm like, this is how I have to live. I have to start by making my bed every day.
Yeah. After I saw that video, I was like, I got to go live with this guy for a month, and then I'll be perfect.
It's pretty cool, and I'm like, make your bed. I never fucking made my bed. And the funny part is my oldest boy, and I don't know if he saw the video either. He makes his bed every day, and it's about habits. That's all it is.
Just about creating, constructive habits. Really,
exactly.
We're creatures of habits.
Because we are, and that's where hockey players have such self-discipline and are so focused and dedicated. And I remember everybody used to say, "Oh, it must have been cool playing against a big, large crowd." They were so loud last night. I never, ever, ever remembered playing in a loud building. Although Chicago Stadium, when they honked the horn, was pretty cool. But you get so focused, you don't hear anything. You are so focused and concentrating on the game. You don't hear a thing. You don't hear fans yelling at you or booing you. I just never did. And a lot of guys were like that, but I never remember hearing large crowds of screaming because you're, maybe at the end of the game when the game's over and they cheer you won, you're like, because you let your guard down and everything's like, right on, this is fun, but not during the game. I rarely remember that. It's just, there's so many different forms of habits that can help you, and there's habits that can hurt you, and it's hard going back to your original question, it's hard for hockey players and athletes to make that transition. There's a lot of guys. It doesn't surprise me when you hear some of the stories of guys like Joe Murphy and even Bob Probert I played with. I mean, there's so much pressure on players. There's so much pressure from not just the outside world, from within, because athletes push themselves beyond what sometimes they're capable of doing. And when you don't reach that level, you're even harder on yourself. And every athlete's the same. You know how it is.
Joe had a huge amount of pressure on him. We went to the same high school. I used to watch him and Brett Hall play when I was a kid. But Joe in particular, I mean, he was so hard on himself. And
I know.
Even the teachers too. I mean, he was kind of put on a pedestal by a lot of his guys especially, and the girls. Everyone loved him and revered him. But at the same time, he was just Joe. He was a normal guy that could just play the game good. But he put so much pressure on himself. I actually saw him when I was going across Canada in 2019 and in Kenora, and it was kind of brief, but
was he on the streets then? Yeah, he's been on the streets for a while, hasn't he? I know. Yeah. It's such a sad story. But you know what? I can see exactly how that can happen. It's it's like,
well, you don't know any other life. He only knew that one life. He had the money. He didn't have anybody managing his money in the right way or his mental health.
And that's the other side of it. I remember we had a lot, and I had a lot of buddies that had managers that took advantage of you, and a lot of players lost a bunch of money because they put trust in somebody. There's guys here. Well, my old buddy Lenny Berry owned Bear Mountain, and those guys lost their shirts. I think Mike Vernon lost like $5 million, and a lot of guys lost a lot of money. Trevor Kidd, who was a buddy of mine, we played World Junior together, and it was unbelievable. You put your trust in people, and that's where, over the course of time playing hockey, I actually stopped trusting anybody. I never trusted anybody anymore. It was like you become this secluded. I don't trust them. I don't trust them. I don't trust them. They want something from you. They're after your money. They're after this. They want. It's almost like it's just a habit. And it's funny when you'd run into, when I was playing in New York, and I'd run into other guys in the bar, or in a restaurant, or at a ski hill, or whatever. It was almost like we knew each other right away, and I might not ever have even talked to the guy. I'm like, "Hey, how's it going? Yeah, nice to see you." Whatever. They automatically let you in. I remember going home to Christmas from New York, and the Oilers whoever was around at Christmas time would invite me over to their Christmas parties. Because there's hockey guys around. There was, it was one of those things. Kelly Rudy, we used to skate together in the summertime. It was all these hockey guys, and it was like hockey guys trusted hockey guys because everybody understood the lifestyle and the stories that went along with it.
Yeah, it's the trust issues from a lot.
Trust is huge.
It's huge, especially when you leave home at such a young age.
Oh, exactly.
And it's like all of a sudden you're thrown out to the wolves. I mean, I can definitely relate. My first year away from home, I lived in 4 different homes. I'm not trying to play a victim or anything like that.
No, it is. It's hard.
I was scared of the coach for crying out loud on saying, this house isn't working for me. There's no food, or there's this or that. This is before they, this is way back before they screened the billets and, really were like cognizant on the players' well-being and where they were headed and whatnot. So, having that proper fit where it's essential. If you don't have that, then these kids are, their self-esteem is going to go down, their peak performance, everything. And, they're just kids at the end of the day. Yeah. They look like grown men, but they're kids.
100%. And even when I was working for the Blazers here, I remember sitting in the stands and listening to the fans yell at these kids, and I would become irate. I'm like, you would never yell. If somebody yelled at your kid like that, I think you'd press charges. And these fans would just abuse players that are 16 years old. I'm like, they're kids. And then they take their helmets off. And I remember fans going, I can't believe how young they are. And I'm like, why are you fucking yelling at them and booing them? And you have no idea what they've gone through to get to this point, and the dedication they've made. And your kids are at home. They're staying up all night playing Xbox, smoking weed, or doing drugs, or out drinking with their friends at 14, 15, stealing things, breaking into cars. And you're yelling at these kids. You have no idea how good behaved these kids are, well behaved these kids are.
Yeah, it can almost turn, a good attitude into a poor attitude in a pretty short
Absolutely.
amount of time, just because of resenting,
Yeah,
almost, the game and some of the fans that are being so hard on them. It's bullshit, really, at
absolutely.
the end
It
of the
is
day.
bullshit. I look at even, I get it. When you go to a professional game, you go to Vancouver, you pay $200 for a ticket. You're not happy with the entertainment. Say something. These guys are pros. You can say whatever you want. You go to a junior game, these are 16, 17, 18
Yeah.
year old kids. They're not getting
Who are
paid.
working their tail off.
They're not getting paid. They
Yeah.
work their tail off to try and achieve a goal so that they can continue to entertain you. Because without them, if none of these kids did this and there was no hockey and no sports, I don't think you would have the same entertainment that you would have, that you enjoy today, by being able to turn the TV on and watching a hockey game, watching World Juniors, watching a football game. All these kids are
100%.
the same. And
Yep.
that's where, a lot of these guys, it's almost like they didn't make it, so they're bitter about it. It's like playing men's hockey sometimes. When you played pro hockey and you go play men's hockey, there's guys that are out to get you all the
Well,
time.
they still think there's scouts in the stands for
They're
crying out loud.
exactly
God,
their dream's not over. They think
it,
if they check you or get the puck or the goalie stops you, they get a chance. Oh yeah, I could play in the NHL. I should have played. Like, this happened to me or that happened to me. I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. It's just funny.
All right, so you were an assistant coach with the Vancouver Giants, a few seasons back. How did you enjoy that experience?
Loved it. It was
Yeah.
great. I decided, and there was a purpose why I moved down to Vancouver. When my oldest son Nick stopped playing after his fifth year playing for the Blazers, um, I spent 1 year continue to work. I worked there. It was my 16th year, 15th or 16th year. I sat in the press box, and it was so hard to watch games because I got to watch my kid play every night. And it was something that I didn't get to enjoy a lot of the things he had early in his life because of hockey, that took me away from him. And I had the luxury and the privilege of watching him play every single night at home. And it was the one of the greatest thrills of all time. For me, it was like playing in the NHL again,
That's pretty
watching him play
awesome.
and
And he had
watching
a
his
great
success.
role model to look up to in you.
Yeah, he might not think that's something, probably quietly, but he would never admit
I
it.
think my dad thinks the same thing, but he's number one in my head and my heart.
Exactly, hundred
Yeah.
percent, absolutely.
So,
And I spent a year where I'm like, this is not fun. I missed it every day, and I'm like, I got to go do something. I want to go back and coach. And I was one of those. I coached the kids all through minor hockey, and I coached both kids. I try to help other teams. I love coaching because I was a big believer that when you play pro hockey for so long and you think a little bit different, I was doing minor hockey kids an injustice by not being able to offer my services and being able to help them and teach them and help them guide through some situations that I've already been through. And the sky's not going to fall, and the life isn't over when you don't score a goal or your coach yells at you. And I wanted to be able to help kids again. So I said, that's it. I'm going to go down. I ended up getting a full-time job with the Delta Hockey Academy in Vancouver, out of
okay.
Delta. And I coached a female prep team. I've never coached girls before. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever done in my life, because I literally enjoyed. These girls were just like sponges, where they just, everything you said they did. They were different than boys. They do
Yeah.
exactly what you tell them. You tell them to go around the circle this way, they go around the circle that way. Some of the boys are not paying
Well,
attention.
some of these
They're
women are
all,
incredible hockey players now.
it's unbelievable.
It's sick. Yeah,
It
they're
was so cool. And then once I got down there, I got a call from, I think it was Michael Dick, our head coach. He's like, they just lost their assistant, or their assistant coach. He went and did something else. So I was going to be a part-time assistant with
right.
him and Jamie Heward. And I knew Huey from playing against him over the years. But so I was a part-time assistant with the Giants, which I think I spent more time with them than I did the girls, just because of the way our schedule was,
Right.
and absolutely loved it. I would be calm and quiet in the morning with the girls at practice at 6:30, 7 o'clock. And then I'd go to the Giants practice in the afternoon. I'd yell and scream at them, but it was just a completely different animal compared to each other.
For
But
sure.
it was, you know what? I absolutely loved it because of two reasons. One, junior players are highly motivated. They are so dedicated and love to come to the rink every day and have fun, work hard. And it was almost like I was reliving my junior and pro days again, because I saw these kids going through everything, every single thing I went through in all my years of pro hockey and junior. I watched right in front of me some of these kids go through it, and it was like, it was fun. I felt bad for them sometimes because I remember the feeling as well, but I wanted to help them.
Yeah,
And
you should be a
I got an
mentor at the
opportunity.
same time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I had an opportunity to coach and teach kids and help them, which is one of the greatest feelings in the world as a coach, and help these kids get through, tough times. Their parents aren't there. They're all staying at different billets.
absolutely. Well, it's a
It was
beautiful
to the
thing when you can pay it forward with your own experiences.
100%.
So you go through
Exactly.
what you have to go through sometimes, I think, to be able to get to this point where you can actually pay it forward and be able to give your knowledge, to be able to give back, not to a game that you loved and brought
Absolutely.
you to this point today, and even with your
Absolutely.
son, where he's going, who knows, your son might be playing in the NHL in a couple of years.
Yeah, and the funny part is, and this is another part that fans don't understand how young they are and how vulnerable they are, is we had a lot of kids with, you yell at them or they have a bad game, they're crying. They're
Yeah,
kids. Their pride is hurt. They miss their parents. They might miss their dog at home. They're still kids. And
absolutely.
it's unbelievable how some fans don't understand that. They
Hmm.
just can't stop to think, you know what? I never thought about these kids living away from home. Some of the kids didn't speak English very well either because they came from Europe, like our
Yeah,
Europeans. And now they're thrown into the middle of a country. They don't understand the language. Their culture is different. The food is different. The way of life is different. And they have to survive. They're still 16, 17, 18-year-old kids,
yeah.
you know? And it's one of those things where coaching gave me that back and I absolutely loved it. And when everything got shut down here in February, I came back. We had our national championship, if you will, in Penticton for the academy team, and then the Giants got shut down. I came home, and really, it was a longest year of my life because between the two teams, I never got one day off.
Mhm.
They never fell. The days off never fell on the same day as each other. So if I had a day off with the Giants, I still had to go work with the academy team with the girls, and vice versa. And we traveled a lot too. So I was traveling, flying with the girls because they always had to get some exposure out east with
Yeah.
tournaments, and then bussing with the Giants. It was a long year. It was something
It
where
sounds like
it
it.
was hard. It was hard on me. I remember coming home at Christmas and I literally sat in pajamas for 3 straight days and did nothing but sit and drink coffee and Baileys and whiskey and beer and clam. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I cooked and made prime rib and prawns and I loved it. And I did nothing. I needed it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's
Yeah.
that's pretty nice. So, how has the current situation in the world affected you and the people that you're close to?
you know, I'll be honest, and I
I mean, who's kidding
probably
who? It's no joke. It really is no joke. I think that more or less, not on on the whole sickness thing, but on the mental side. What people are going through,
it's
businesses
right.
closing down.
100%. You know what? And I probably, I don't know. I'm one of those guys that I'll say how I think. I've always said my peace of mind. I think there's a lot of mistakes being made right now, and without pointing fingers, our kids' education, youth sports, the future of these kids is in jeopardy right now. And I think the future of the world is in jeopardy right now. There's businesses, like you said, that are shutting down. People that lose their businesses and lose their livelihoods do take drastic measures.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it's going to become so serious at some point if we can't find a way to get back to some normalcy, where there's going to be people killing themselves. There's going to be people doing stupid things because they've lost their lives, and they might be perfectly healthy,
Well,
you
that is a
know.
pure truth. I was actually talking to a psychologist out of New York a few days ago, and they said that the suicide rates have gone up 40%
Yeah,
since
it's
this has happened,
unbelievable.
which is
It's
unbelievable.
unbelievable.
People
It is
are dropping
unbelievable.
like flies. That is
They
that is the
are.
reality, and you got to. It's survival mode for so many people, and especially for people that are addicts or have
Yeah, I
suffered from a
know.
lot of isolation because of mental health issues and whatnot, which their go-to stay
Yeah,
inside, not reach out. And that's one of the main things is, if you are suffering, reach out for help, and even on this platform is definitely, it's all about community and unity at the end of the day.
right,
It's about bringing
right.
people together. This isn't,
Absolutely.
something where we can just, this isn't about getting famous and,
I know.
or, throwing out the podcast where we're, busting the other guy's balls and trying to make him feel bad, so he goes to work the next day and might have an issue with somebody. This is about being
Right.
real. And so I really
100%.
appreciate your transparency and being real with this, because we are living in a time of drastic change. It's a great disconnect. And I think at no other time in history, we need to be more connected in harmony.
Absolutely.
This is
And
it's a toughie.
it's almost like there's so much hatred in the world right
Oh
now,
God,
all
people are
because of
angry
this.
everywhere these days.
Yeah, it's like, the Asians getting beaten up in Vancouver, the hatred from people not wearing masks or wearing masks, and the uneducated people that might not know, they might not have cable at home, they might not understand fully what's going on and the danger if they have health issues. My wife works at the hospital, and she says there's people come in every day and they don't wear masks, and they're elder, and they've got a ton of different health issues, and they don't understand the severity of their own health because they just don't have the access to the resources like some of us do to find out and listen and pay attention. Elderly people aren't on social media all the time, and
No.
some of them don't even have enough money to pay for cable. They're waiting for newspapers that are going out of business to read, and it's honestly, right, it's, to me, I feel bad for these kids, and I watch my kid every day here. He's finally gone back to work because he thought eventually they were going to go, back and play. The world is losing the ability for these children to grow up and be educated and continue to have, successful lives and teach and be good business owners and community people. And there's a lot of athletes around the world that are suffering from this.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to get worse, and
Yeah,
people are going to start doing stupid things.
The
100%.
collateral damage from this is going to
Absolutely.
years.
It's crazy because I haven't been to Costco for a while, but there's like 400 people in Costco.
Oh yeah. I mean,
You go to the grocery store, and yeah, I know we need food, but if we don't help our children and these kids that have discipline, like we've talked about, and goals in their lives to become better humans, individuals, and successful people in the world, our world's going to be more fucked up than we could ever imagine. And that's the reality of it. And I know some people might agree or disagree, but that's just the way it is. It's eventually, if you keep, my kid's in school out in Waterloo right now, and he has been locked up in his room. He's got roommates, and they don't go around with each other. He's been locked up in his room for the last 4 months, studying and taking classes, and his mental health I'm worried about, because it's not easy. He's a real independent, focused kid, and hockey's, thank God for hockey, I think has really helped him learn that and have that ability. But it's screwing kids up, and as a parent, going back to your original question, I'm worried for my kids and a lot of kids that have, look at these kids that got drafted in the NHL recently. Their future's unsure, and they've been training so hard. These kids that are supposed to go to their whole life, and there's and I honestly believe there's some decisions that are being made right now in our governments from based on political reasons, and not the future and the well-being of our kids and their lives and livelihoods. And that's, I know, it's like, hey, uncle already.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's thank you for your enlightenment on that one. That was bang on. So what are the top 3 things on your bucket list?
Here's the hard part. And I think about this often. And here's the challenge of,
all right, just name one.
I don't have any.
That is
and
awesome.
You want to know why?
Because you've already done them all.
I've done. You know what? I try to explain this to people. I achieved the goal in my life that I wanted to do. I had a dream, and I got to live the dream out. To me,
how do you get that adrenaline back again? Really?
You can't. It's not even close. You cannot explain the adrenaline you get from stepping on the ice and playing the game.
Yeah.
And you can't explain the adrenaline you get from scoring a goal or winning a hockey game or getting a hat trick or getting into a fight. or coming back from a deficit in a game or a series or a playoff, or winning a championship and celebrating with your teammates. I won the world. I was on a team that won the world junior gold medal. I'm like,
You were
there's
the
so
top
many.
scorer on the team too, weren't you?
We had a few of us. We
Yeah.
had a great team. There's nothing that can trump it.
Yeah.
I don't have anything. I traveled playing hockey my whole life. I lived in 23 different cities in 19 years. And I went around the world. I could order a beer in probably 100 different languages. I could tell you to fuck off in 25 languages. It was one of those things where hockey did things for us that
Yeah.
really set you up for failure after hockey, because
Oh, Christ.
nothing can compare it. The only thing that makes me feel as good as watching my kids have success. I'll be honest with you. That's it.
That's great.
Watching my kid score a goal. I remember my kid had a goal. It's won the game. He won it, scored in a shootout to win the game, or he scored in overtime to win the game. I'm like, that, I know the feeling he's getting. So it brings back my feeling. And some people just can't understand that feeling. It's a feeling that
you can't understand it unless you've been through it.
You can't understand it.
I try to explain it to my folks even sometimes. I'm like, you don't understand. You don't get it. And
you don't.
No one gets it unless they've actually been through it.
If you've never been punched in the face, you can't explain to somebody what it feels like to be punched in the face.
Exactly.
It's just one of those things, it's bucket list. It's funny you asked that, because I always think to myself, I'm like, oh, this will be so fun. I'm like, yeah, it was fun, but I don't know. It does not even compare to some of the highs that you go through in hockey and in sport, and victory and accomplishing goals and dreams. They're just, my dream right now, or my goal, is to just stay alive every day. That's it.
Me too. It's funny. I got the same goal is to stay healthy, just keep doing something productive.
I know.
Just the progression of something worthy.
I'm not a guy that sits still. I can't sit still. I never have, and I never will. Tell. The busier I am, the more likelihood I'll be able to have the opportunity to wake up the next day. Because if I'm not, then my mind wanders and I start thinking too much, and I'm an overthinker. I did it when I played hockey. If I played a game, I stayed up no matter how many beer I had or I didn't have after the game. Yeah. I stayed up till 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I ran through every single play, every game, every night, my entire career. It's just something we did. And now I do the same thing in business and in work, and people are like, leave your work. My wife always gets mad at me. Leave your work at home. I don't know any different. And I'm not probably mentally strong enough anymore the way I was when I played to be able to just get rid of it out of my mind.
Well, you sound very mentally well put together.
It's a good front.
Well, you wear it good. So how old would you be if you didn't know how old you were?
16.
16. That's a good one. Yeah, sweet 16 forever, eh?
Sweet 16. The reason why, you can drive, like we could drive back then. You were still too young to get into the bar, so you'd sneak in, and it was more fun to get into the bar
unless
when you
weren't supposed
ID. To be in there. Exactly. Yeah. And I did too. I had my brother. I went into the driver's license bureau in Edmonton. I'll never forget this. Stole my brother's social insurance and his, health card. Yeah. Went into the driver's license place and said, hey, I lost my driver's license. Hey, no problem. Sit down here, take a picture. You know what the hard part was? The funniest thing in the world. I remember sitting there. You got to wait for your card to be ready. They laminate it and everything. And you're in there in the room, and my next door neighbor walks in. He sits down. He did the same thing. He's my dad's age. And I'm like, I'm fucked, because they got to call out your name to tell you your driver's license is ready.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. And the best part was, I took my dad had a truck that he didn't use. He only used in the summertime. They would go to our lake, and I was taking my driver's training course. I didn't have my driver's license yet. I drove from south side Edmonton to the north side every single day for 3 straight weeks in my dad's truck to go to driver training, and I didn't have my license yet. And it was probably a half an hour drive across the city. And I was 16. I took my dad's truck.
That's ballsy.
It was like, and then the good dad that he is, started writing kilometers down, and I'm like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
God,
Yeah.
off the record, I stole my dad's keys. He was on a business trip. I was
Yeah.
supposed to go in for my driver's test the very next day, but I was so excited. I stole the keys. He was on a business trip. I ended up wrapping my dad's car around a telephone pole the day before
Oh
I went to get my
no.
driver's license.
Oh
And
Jesus.
he's like, but I got a way out of this, Dad. I'm like, let's just pretend that we'll pretend the accident happened 2 days later. Let's just be real
Wow.
dishonest here, and I'll go ace the
Wow.
driver's test, and then we'll
Yeah.
just be off scot free. And he was like, "Fuck, I don't like lying. There's no way I'm going
Wow.
to do this." But
That's awesome. That's what we did as kids.
that's what we did.
I never wore a helmet when I was a kid.
Hey, so what's worse? What's worse, failing or trying?
Oh, failing's
Actually,
way worse.
failing or never trying.
Never trying eats you up because you question yourself whether you should have tried it the rest of your life. So probably never trying would be a longer term. It would have a long term effect. Never failing. At least failing as an athlete gives you motivation to keep trying again. You just don't quit.
Yeah, I don't even believe there is such thing as failure as long as you try.
Right. Right, exactly. Like we had a saying in hockey: if you anybody that got into a fight, you showed up to fight. It didn't matter if you win or lost. You actually came to a point where you made a decision to defend yourself or defend a teammate. So it didn't matter if you got beaten up or not. It wasn't who won or lost the fight. It was showing up for the fight. It was showing up. There's a lot of games where you worked your ass off, as you know, and it's great. You work your ass off and you don't win all the time. And they're great life lessons because you can go to work every day. And I noticed that now. I've been selling trucks for my buddy here at Kamloops Ford. You go and you work your ass off. You can try everything you can and you get nothing out of it. But you get up in the morning, you make your bed, you work out, and you get back and do it again.
Yeah. Well, they say persistence is to man is what carbon is to steel.
Exactly. There you go. You're 100% right.
So what's something that that you do differently than most people?
Other
than putting your underwear on backwards.
I would probably say when I do something, I put every ounce. Well, there's a couple. I put every ounce of energy and love and passion into it, and won't stop until I'm happy with the result.
I don't know. That.
I put so much. That's probably why I'm not going to live very long. I put so much pressure on myself in hockey. When you're successful and you're part of an elite group, you don't know any different. You don't know any different. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm going to come over tonight for dinner and give you a nice back massage.
It's funny you say that. I was giving one of the guys in the showroom yesterday a massage. He goes, "Oh, my back's out." He goes, "Fuck, you got big meaty hands."
So, what is the most desirable trait another person can possess?
To make somebody laugh.
Yes. Yeah.
Make somebody laugh. And that was probably one of the things that created such a bond between not just Linger and Doty and myself, but your teammates that you can laugh with when there's not a lot to laugh about.
Yeah.
Is something really special. And that's where I'm a big believer when you can make somebody laugh, and I'm going back to the way the world is. There's so much hatred and anger and fighting, and everybody's jealous. And I'll be honest with you, I fucking hate social media.
Oh fuck, me too. Unfortunately, it's become part of our lives, but it
is, and it helps. You can use it. I finally went on Facebook this year for the first time, and I actually there's some huge upside to it.
Absolutely,
I have some condo rentals here, and I can look people up and do a little research about them. But social media has completely harmed more people than it's helped.
Well, I think so, because so many people are comparing themselves to others, and
That's exactly what it
what you see
is.
on a nice photo with somebody, it could be real, it could be fake, but like at the end of the day, none of it's in the present moment.
Exactly.
It's like,
And it's funny because I put this background on, and I always think to myself, when I do things, or when I go somewhere, I'm like, I don't want to post something or do something, because it's almost like going, haha, look at me, I'm at the lake, you're not, trying to make people jealous. People post pictures of them going to Mexico and being on the beach in the middle of the wintertime, and half the world's stuck in a snowstorm. I'm like, are you rubbing it in? Oh, look at this beautiful wine I got. Look at this expensive bottle. Look at me, I'm all dressed up and look nice. I'm like, you know what? I don't give a fuck. If you want to text me or email me a picture of your family vacation, or my family's, going to do something special, I'll show people that are within I'm not going to share it with the world. I
yeah,
don't give a fuck what you're doing, and I'm not telling you what I'm doing, because it's none of your business.
yeah, it's
Social media is really, really dangerous. Even it's funny, because my kid at Waterloo, he loves studying. I always call him a fucking nerd. He goes, Dad, you have no idea how proud I am for you to call me a fucking nerd. And he was doing exams. He went through his midterms, whatever it was, about a month and a half ago. I was texting him, going, kid, are you okay? Are you okay? He turned his phone off for like 3 weeks, because he said I was being distracted, and I didn't need any distractions. He said, looking at my social media, every minute I look on it, it distracts me for 7 to 10 minutes. He comes up with some stupid formula. And I'm like, good for you, kid, because it's a distraction. I'll get up in the middle of the night. And I'll grab my phone and I'll look at emails if I can't sleep. And I'm like, that's a distraction.
Yeah, it's become like literally like a physical extension to our bodies, for crying out loud. I'll tell you a funny story. I went to go grab a phone a couple days ago. I needed a new phone, and I got pulled over. Both these phones didn't work because I was going to have to download my iCloud stuff. And so I got two phones sitting on my truck passenger side seat.
Yeah.
And I got an undercover cop behind me. All I'm doing is checking out the Best Buy bag that had the receipt in it. I got pulled over, and the guy says I was on the phone. I was like, I'm like, listen, man. I'm like, look, both my phones are right beside me here. They don't work, and like, I don't know what you think or what I'm doing here. I'm like, I'm straight up with you. I'm being honest with you. And he ended up writing me up a $350 fine. And then he's like, I can tell you're telling the truth, Ryan. I don't want to ruin your day, so I'll help you get off this ticket. But I had no choice. I have a job to do. I'm like, yeah, but you're not really doing your job. I wasn't on the phone. You can see right there that I wasn't on the phones, because both my phones aren't goddamn working.
Right.
That was my third time to the mall that day trying to get them going. Anyways.
Right. It's unbelievable. And that's where some people just don't know how to make not even a rash decision, but it's like they're robots. People are robots, and there's no common sense anymore.
No.
I
know. Well, we can have common sense. It's about implementing it and trying to like exude that to other people as well, where they can get their head out of their ass and start waking up and start treating people with some more kindness and compassion.
Exactly. How many times you open the door for somebody, they don't even say thank you? I fucking hate that. It drives me nuts. I always go, you're welcome.
I have no expectations, and I do it anyway.
You know what? That's exactly it. It's like we don't even expect anything from anybody anymore.
No. I used to get pissed off at that kind of shit, but now it's just like, you know what? I open doors for everybody, and it's like I don't expect anything. I'll go out of my way to help people. I just don't expect anything. And at the end of the day, I think that living in that state, kind of brings you more of, fulfillment. At least, you're doing the best you can is just to be a good human being.
100%. I remember as a kid, I never called my neighbors by their first name. It was always Mr. Phillips. It was Mr. Chyzowski. It was Mr. Clark. It was Mrs. Heath. I never called anybody by their first name. It was a sign of respect.
Yep.
My mom would have slapped me if I would have called the neighbor by her first name. And the
Same as
speaking
my
of,
parents. Sounds like we
it's
have the
great.
same kind of parents.
100%. I
Same
got
generation
strapped
for
and
sure.
spanked. Yeah. And nobody spanks their kids anymore these days because the kids will call 911 and rat on them, and the social services will come, and we'll see how these kids grow
My
up to be
dad can
without
never catch
spanking.
me.
I know.
Catch me, get the belt out, and I'd be out the back
100%.
door, and I'd jump over the fence, and
Exactly.
I'd be
Yeah,
gone for
exactly.
2 days.
Yeah, exactly.
So, where do you find inspiration today? Where do you find your inspiration?
You know, I think that that's a real good question. I have to say that I've had a lot of health issues. My hockey's beat the shit out of me. I've had 13 surgeries, 3 major back surgeries in the last 4 years. And I think one of the things that I have to say is just being able to get up every day and having a workout and trying to make my body feel better and staying in shape. I see a lot of guys, and I'm not going to point anybody out, but Doty's one of them, that just let themselves go after hockey, and there's no reason to. There's no reason why you have to do that to yourself, because we have so much self-discipline in us that it's easy to eat proper. It's easy to, you don't have to work out like a madman like we did when we were younger, but to stay healthy, go for walks, ride a bike, eat healthy, and learn to do some things to take care of your body better is something that, and hockey players still like to drink beer. And as you get older, it's harder to drink beer and stay in shape. But at the end of the day, I think I have to say I try to find some inspiration by just staying healthy and fit,
Yep.
and being able to just being able to not shovel the walk and not be able to walk for 3 days.
Absolutely. I think it's doing the things that we don't want to do a lot of the times
Exactly.
that are the best things for us. And
100%.
then when you do it, like I know for myself, I always like to give myself 2 hours at the gym because I know
Yep.
that it's good for me, and if I
Absolutely.
can set that goal of getting in there and getting a good sweat, it sets the tone usually for the day.
100%.
I try to bang it out first thing in the morning. If not,
100%. Yeah,
whatever, but it releases those
absolutely.
natural endorphins into the brain.
100%. You start the day off in a positive way no matter what. And it's
Exactly.
good for your mind too. I find working out and just being active is good for your mind, and it gives you
Just
a
saying thank
purpose
you.
to. Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
no matter what, it's a blessed life that we've lived. No matter
Yeah,
what we've been through.
absolutely.
Think
No,
of those people that
100%
are
right.
over in Bangladesh and it's places
Yeah,
in India and
no
third world
kidding.
countries where they're having a hell of a go. People sleeping
Yeah,
on the street. I mean, here too,
I know.
it's global.
It's
But at the end of
everywhere.
the
It
day, it's a
is.
mindset too.
It is a mindset. Yeah. I always say the bums on the streets, these guys work so hard to get cans and stay alive. You'd be the best employers because you're employees, because you
Oh,
guys work your ass off 24/7 just trying to stay alive. It'd be so much easier in your life to go get a job.
yeah, a lot of them are really good salesmen too. When they ask you for
They
25
aren't
cents,
they?
Christ,
Uh,
they usually. I mean, one kid got 25 cents out of me at the Tim Hortons drive-through today. I was like, this guy would be a great salesman. You got
100%. They're smarter than we could ever imagine because they know, you talk about street smart, they're like masters in it. They've got their master's degree in street smart because that's the only way they stay alive.
absolutely.
You take somebody from Harvard that's got his master's and a doctorate degree or something, put them on the street for 6 months and see how well they do.
Well, that's the difference between street smarts and
Exactly.
encyclopedia and textbook
Exactly.
smarts.
Exactly.
So, might as well ask you, what impact do you want to leave on the world, Chizer?
You
You've already
know,
left a big one so far. So,
yeah,
what's next?
I like to think that when I'm dead, I hope people look back at me as being a kind, caring, wonderful, fun fucking guy that did not know how to grow up.
Holy shit! I feel like I'm looking at myself in the mirror.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great answer.
I lived every day like it was my last day on earth, and there was probably a lot of days that it got me in some trouble where I didn't sleep at all, or I was staying at the bar too much, or I stayed out late, or I didn't have the energy to work out as hard as I could have. I was my own
Well, at least you didn't end up in prison, or did you?
yeah. No, you know what? I did for a fundraiser. That was it. We did a jail and bail here about 10 years ago, and I helped donate some money and got arrested. I did. I was one of those guys too that if I bumped into you, I was just a happy guy. If I bumped into you in the bar and the guy said, "Hey, you got a fucking problem?" I said, "Hey, sorry, man, let me buy you a beer."
Yeah.
Never wanted to fight. Didn't, because I didn't trust. If we were going to go outside like in hockey, at least you got refs and you're just punching each other. I never knew if I was going to get stabbed or their buddies were going to come in or I was going to get shot. So I was just one of those guys. I loved going to the bar and being a happy guy. I loved having guys over my team. And Linger and Doty would remember this. We had a guy on our team, Nick Nemenko. He went to school at University of Wisconsin, and I think he got his culinary arts degree there. His dream was to open up a restaurant when he was done hockey.
Yeah.
And he taught me how to cook. And we would go to practice and go for lunch after practice. When 1 o'clock we'd be done. We'd get to the rink at 9. We'd be done by 1-ish, 2 o'clock. We'd go have a bite to eat, and we'd go to the grocery store probably 3 times a week, depending on our games. And I'd invite the whole team over to my place all the time, and we would cook all day, like gourmet dinners, and guys would come over and we'd drink and have fun. And I just didn't know, and I'd do it all myself and clean it all up myself and loved it. And I had the team over probably a couple times a week, once a week, all the time, and loved it.
That's awesome. I like. We haven't had a goalie on the show yet. I want to get Bill Ramford on here so I can ask him about
get Billy on.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe we can reach out to him and have a bullshit or whatever. We get him 100%. On. Yeah, that'd be awesome. So, well, why don't we wrap things up here? I mean, how can we follow you, Dave? As far as I know you're on social media on Facebook. So, do you want to be sought after by people?
Sure, I don't care.
You can decline or say yes, that's for sure. But you're on Facebook.
Absolutely.
As Dave Chyzowski. I guess you got your Instagram handle there too.
Yeah.
Do you ever? I don't know if you go on Instagram that much.
I do a little bit. Yeah. I used to, before I was working, when COVID shut everything down in whatever it was, February, I was cooking every day and I was posting all my meals online all the time.
Well, you should have your own cooking show.
I would love that. That would be something, probably would be my last.
I love cooking too. We could maybe collaborate on that.
100%. Yeah. I'm all in when it's cooking. It's both hands, both feet, and get her done.
Get her done. Have some fun. Right on, man. Well, this has been great talking to you. And if all our listeners out there, if they could maybe leave a review on Apple Podcasts, it'd be much appreciated. You can follow us on YouTube. We're on Spotify, Buzzsprout, and all major podcast platforms. And I have to say, Dave, this has been a wonderful chat. And you're just a great guy, man. I can see a good friendship forming here already. So
absolutely,
I'm glad I'm just down the road from you. So
100%. We'll find a beer together one of these days.
We will do that.
Falkland Pub's halfway, and it's one of my favorite spots.
Awesome, much appreciated. That's a wrap for All Over the Map. Take care, buddy.
See you, Rye.